Now, I think that we could all agree here that Snow White, the live-action movie, is universally rejected by many people, such as not just Snow White and Disney fans, but just regular, common moviegoers that may not be fully, researching or really on top of things with the whole Snow White drama. There's a lot of families, by the way, that are already boycotting this film left and right, well before the trailer has even released online by Disney. And specifically, we know that Bob Iger and his cost containment plan is already wreaking havoc on the marketing campaign of Snow White ahead of time. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. Now, one thing about Snow White, and we talked about this, is that there's a lot of revisions happening as of right now, a lot of re-edits by director Mark Webb and the editors over behind the scenes for Snow White. They're rearranging things, they're cutting down the running time. We talked about how this movie initially was very close to 3 hours long in length, and I kept questioning myself here, who in the world would bring their kids to watch a near 3-hour movie is beyond me, especially a Snow White film that is completely, changing the source material to the point where it's just disgusting. Now, we know one thing about Disney right now has a lot to do with the current cut of Snow White, the test screenings that have been failing one after the other, and it's not looking good. It may very well be right up there, with the box office failure of, Fury of the Gods and other movies out there that have really failed throughout 2023. Now, what's interesting about this is that with Snow White 2024 going through endless issues by Disney, one major development has to do with the current cut of the film and the opening scene. As it turns out, one of the important sequences that were chosen by director Mark Webb for the finalized cut of the opening sequence involves Snow White, in which Rachel Zegler's Snow White is singing a song in this opening scene about rising to become a leader. The song's lyrics reportedly holds anti-love lyrics, where writer Greta Gerwig had Zegler perform singing sessions that focuses on how love is a distraction from becoming a leader. As this unfolds, there is a full-fledged scene that follows the opening song where Snow White can be seen training with a new character called the Protector. As it turns out, the song plays over those sequences in which Zegler can be actually seen punching and kicking wooden figures that appear similar to the wooden human structure from the Karate Kid Part 3. Now guys, let me say one thing about this, alright? Now, we talked about this lightly a couple of weeks ago, but the further details about this opening scene is that, as it turns out, the song being presented by Rachel Zegler about this anti-love, lyrics, and about rising to become a leader, that was written, by the way, by Greta Gerwig, who is a very agenda-driven writer, must I add, in Hollywood. It's pretty much known at this point. But she's kicking and punching these wooden structures. Like I said before, they appear to be very similar in design to what you see Ralph Macchio destroying in the Karate Kid Part 3 when he's training with Terry Silver. It's very much like that, kind of. You got the Protector guiding Snow White, you got Snow White getting all riled up and trying to become the leader that she needs to become. Now, again, we know that Rachel Zegler confirmed elements of this at the last D23 event that actually promoted Snow White, where Zegler was saying how this movie is really all about her attempting to become a leader by the lessons from her late father that are being carried with her throughout her life. And it's not really such a love story this time around. It's something different. And the thing that I think is driving families away from really going ahead and giving this movie a chance at all, and they have valid reasons to not watch this movie, and I advise everyone to not see this movie at all, because I think that Disney needs to learn that the customers have power over their wallets. They really do. It's the truth. I mean, at the end of the day, these movies only continue to keep happening because at the end of the day, too, people do end up seeing these movies worldwide. Now, what's problematic about this opening sequence for Snow White is that further, she can be seen breaking boards and fighting with sticks in a sparring session with the Protector. The opening of Snow White then progresses to a moment in which she can be seen entering her kingdom or castle left behind by her late father, where she opens a book full of fairy tales, one of which featuring a myth about the 7 dwarfs. In this book, the accurate presentation of the 7 dwarfs is seen by illustration as Snow White reads the tales. The myths, however. This is a dangling of the carrot situation by Greta Gerwig, the writer of the film. As it turns out, later in the movie, the myth of the dwarfs is completely wrong by design, in comparison to reality. Test screeners reportedly were so disgusted over this snippet from the opening scene, as it is an in-your-face moment of the original 37 movie. So, again, one thing that I want to elaborate here is that what is being presented in the opening sequence of Snow White and what it sets up is that ZEGLER's Snow White learns about these myths of the 7 dwarfs, alright? And it's all presented in this fairy tale book, and in this book you get the actual designs of the 7 dwarfs from the 1937 film. And that is honestly really like I said before, a tease to the audience that grew up with the 1937 original. And as it turns out, once ZEGLER closes that book and meets the actual dwarfs that are now called by Disney the magical creatures, there's a shocking element between herself and the group of the magical creatures where she can't really grasp with reality of how they actually appear in that version of itself. So let's discuss further. Now, on top of that, Gerwig, of course, essentially mocks the original film in the form of fake fairy tales in a book that Snow White reads that was left behind by her father that he used to read to her as a bedtime story. There is even a sequence presented by her father in the very beginning, reading these tales to a younger Snow White. In the second act, Snow White meets the real dwarfs, now called magical creatures, and is reportedly shocked at what they really look like apart from the myth. There's even a snippet in this film at the middle point where the magical creatures laugh about how inaccurate the myths really are about how they actually appear. Now, this is where things get out of hand in my book, guys. The fact that Greta Gerwig is going the extra mile to, like I said before, dangle the carrot in front of the audience, saying, oh, you know, this is the original design of the 7 dwarfs, but nope, we're closing that book. That is just a false myth there. That's just a false tale about what they really look like in this world. And I think that at the end of the day, this is like almost like a literal presentation of Disney saying, yeah, we're wiping out that source material and we're making it like it's just nothing more than a bedtime story or a fairy tale in the actual Snow White film. So what they are doing basically is it's a fairy tale within a fairy tale in the opening sequence of this film that's completely false. And it just goes to show you that Gerwig really goes the extra mile to just devalue the Snow White brand. So overall, guys, I would like to hear what you all have to say about this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.